I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Are you ready to win at the game of life? Well, throw out that rulebook and get down to the business of being the best and most authentic version of you. Welcome to the Human Design Podcast. We're changing the rules around success, abundance, purpose, love, and life, where we're creating a planet where everyone can thrive in a world that loves and supports each other. I'm your host, Emma Dunwoody, a qualified master coach, human design expert, podcaster, and entrepreneur that is living the life of my dreams, breaking all the rules while doing it, making a huge impact, and living my design and manifesting miracles on the daily. Join me as I break down and simplify everything you need to live in alignment with your human design, teach you how to recondition your unconscious mind for greatness, and to take back your power so you can manifest your heaven on earth and serve the rest of the planet at the same time. It's time to give up the fear and step into your highest potential, to reach for the stars, to know and live your greatness. It's what you deserve, and it's what the planet really needs from you. So buckle up and enjoy the ride.
I want you to stop everything that you're doing and listen to this. And if you're wondering where that familiar Aussie accent is and you're wondering if you're on the wrong podcast, don't worry, you're in the right place. You're talking to Taylor. Hey, how you doing? And I asked Emma if I could come on and share this with you guys. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've absolutely heard us talk about this. And it's something that I'm super passionate about in our business. And so I wanted to come share it with you. So if you use human design in your business in any way, if you're a coach or you want to use human design in your business, you have to hear this because it's responsible for so much of the growth that we've had this year, and I just can't keep my mouth shut about it anymore. So you've heard us probably talk about this body graph chart software that we use, and it's responsible for bringing more than 15,000 new leads into our business this year alone. Why does this matter for you? Well, if you use or plan to use human design in your business in any way, what you're going to find is that you're sending people to another major website or somebody else's platform for them to get their chart, when instead it could all be happening right in your own business. With the body graph chart software, not only can you host your own chart software on your website so that you don't have to send people away, but you can also add them to your email list. You can follow up with human design information or any other information that's relevant to your business. You can build reading report tools where you can put your own information in to guide them through their journey in a way that is branded and unique to you. This is one of the most brilliant ways to build your own customer journey and to connect with people and to build your business and to create transformation for your clients and anyone that enters your business. We are obsessed, as you can probably hear in my voice, with this software. Like I said, it's brought over 15,000 new amazing people into our community just this year alone. And I don't know what we would do without it, to be honest. So I wanted to come on here and tell you about it so that if you want to try this tool, which I highly recommend that you do, I want to share with you a way that you can get 50% off for 12 months because these guys are amazing. Their customer support is amazing. And if the word software is already scaring you because you're not tech savvy and you don't know anything about websites or how to do these sorts of things, I want you to take a deep breath and don't worry because it's the easiest thing in the world to use. And like I said, their customer service is incredible. With just a couple clicks, you can have this thing up and running on your website in no time. So don't let the tech scare you away. It's really, really easy and it's so worth it. So if you want to try this out in your business, all you have to do is go to bodygraphchart.com. I'll put the link in the show notes and you can get 50% off for 12 months. I know, really generous of them. 50% off for 12 months if you use the code Human Design Podcast, all lowercase, all together, Human Design Podcast. You guys, try it. Okay, I'll leave you alone for the transits now. And if you have any questions about this, just reach out and ask us.
In today's episode, I talk to Chelsea Riffe, a 6'2 reflector, cross of refinement, and she's an industry renowned podcast coach, helping creatives, coaches, and entrepreneurs launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. She blends her 10 years of digital media, content marketing, and storytelling expertise to find the golden ticket strategy for her clients. She's also a full time digital nomad and hosts the top rated podcast, in my non expert opinion, covering the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, the fun and chaos of travel, internet culture, and the mindset BS we all go through. She's an Aquarius sun, Virgo moon, Virgo rising, and reflector in human design, meaning her genius lies within finding innovative, out of this world ideas and bringing them into reality through practical action and detailed planning. And I've got to tell you, this was such a brilliant conversation. So if you are a podcaster or thinking about starting a podcast, this is going to be such an enlightening adventure for you. So enjoy the conversation. Hey, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am super excited to have my guest here today with me, Chelsea Riffe. Is that how I spell
Yes.
Is that how I say your surname?
Yeah, you got it right on the first try.
Perfect, because I was a bit like, damn it, I forgot to ask you before I hit record.
All good.
Yeah, so welcome. So lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so stoked, especially because you were just on my podcast. So I am very excited that we're regrouping right now.
Yeah, I know, right? I was just saying before I hit record, like I could actually listen to your voice all day. Like, no wonder podcasting is part of your jam because, yeah, clearly you've got the voice for it.
Thank you.
I really want to dive into podcasting because I feel like there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast. You know, they're creating their own business there, and many of them are creating their own podcasts. I know my coaches are in the process. I think 3 of my 5 coaches have their own podcast. So I would love to dive into podcasting. For all of those listeners out there that are wondering, Chelsea is a 6'2 reflector, cross of refinement. So we also have to talk about the whole reflector thing because I think you're one of the other reflectors that, because I've had the opportunity to talk to you before and be on your podcast, you really exude this very powerful energy. And I think sometimes with reflectors, we're so misguided because, you know, you guys is kind of like, oh, you're just like these little gentle unicorns. And my experience is not that. My experience is that when you guys are aligned, you're actually like freaking get the hell out of their way powerhouse. And of course, that's also really determined by the people and the places that you surround yourself with. But I really want the reflectors to see what a powerful reflector looks like. So all that said, I would really love to start at the beginning. And the beginning for me, and where my curiosity always goes to, is that we always, in my opinion, our purpose is catalyzed in a moment, in an experience, in a dark night of the soul. You know, for me, it was 7 years. So sometimes it's a long time, sometimes it's a moment where we kind of decide that, wow, I can't tolerate this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. It catalyzes us onto this journey of growth and evolution, and to really discover who we are in our heart space and to become the person that we are today. So I would really love to hear your story. Like, what started this ball rolling for you, Chelsea? And, you know, where are you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to school for digital media, content creation, and storytelling. So, like you said, I've kind of always been on that path wanting to tell stories. And I ended up getting a sales job in corporate America. And I loved it when we started out because it complemented what I did in school. So I was doing sales for an influencer and marketing company, excuse me, content marketing company. And then that was my education and training. So I was excelling at school, I was excelling in this sales job. And then, really, I think after probably 5 years of that job, I started to become really disillusioned with the industry I was working in and the people I was helping and kind of just the toxic work culture of corporate America. And it started to dawn on me like, this is the rest of your life if you don't get out, right? This is it. Like, you're maybe going to get promoted to a manager, maybe become a director. And I had already been promoted a lot of times at that company before. So promotions weren't exciting to me. Making more money wasn't exciting to me because I was like, you're just going to be stuck in this cycle that you're in. I vividly remember coming off the bus stop in Chicago, calling my mom, sobbing on the sidewalk for no reason. Like nothing happened that day. And I was so upset with just everything. Like I feel like I was making all these assholes richer and working on projects I didn't really like and letting other people dictate how I got to say things and create content. And I was just like, this sucks. And now what I've learned so much about creativity and self-expression is when you have something to create and say, and you're just holding it inside yourself, you do become very stressed and sick and out of alignment. So at the same time where I was feeling this job unalignment, I was getting skin rashes all the time. I had scabies, I had shingles, I had hives, I had like every month it was like a new skin disease. And I thought it was my laundry detergent. I kept being like, I just need to change my laundry detergent. It's just my laundry. And, eventually after figuring out actually what's on your inside very much gets expressed on your outside, I realized this is not laundry detergent. This is me being completely out of alignment. So eventually I quit that job. I moved to Australia for a year. And I told you Byron Bay was my magical vortex. I had the best time there. That's where I started my business, like for real. I started making actually paying clients. I met my ex there and we moved in together. I was like in the best shape mentally and physically of my life. So Byron Bay really is a special, special place to me. And from then on, I realized, okay, you don't have to go back to that life. Like you can create your own life. You can create what you want to create. It's going to take a little bit of work and money and hardships and a lot of headaches, but like you don't have to go back to what you were doing before. So now I'm a podcast strategist and consultant, and I also have my own podcast. And so it's my favorite thing to do to help people tell their stories, because for years I was helping people tell stories that I didn't want to help them. And I'm like, I know there's a million people that have incredible stories. And that's really my mission now, is to make sure everyone's story gets told.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And I think like as we are transitioning out of, the language that we use in human design is the old paradigm into the new paradigm. But whatever it is, whether it's the age of Aquarius, whatever it is, as we moving into this new world, I think we're suddenly seeing how our stories actually matter. The individual stories really matter. And in the past, we've been told that they don't, that all that matters is that we conform, that we're obedient, that we do what we're told to do, and then we'll get what we need. And I just love this whole idea of, I get the question all the time, oh my goodness, how do I differentiate myself? And I'm like, just be you. Like, just be you. That's the whole point. Like, stop overcomplicating it. So I absolutely love that. So being a reflector, tell me a little bit about that journey to actually land on podcasting, because obviously you guys are these incredible beings that move through these groups of people or the environments, and you're reflecting it back. And I know that sometimes, yes, that word chameleon is used for you guys a lot. So how do you actually navigate that? Oh my God, I want to do this. Oh my God, I want to do that. Oh, now I don't want to do that. Oh, all of that in and out and in and out to land on this. And the second part of that question, because you are a non-sacral being, therefore I can give you bigger questions.
Yes.
Is, like, how do you navigate? Like, what do you look like? What does the future look like for you? Like, do you think that this is forever, or do you go like, this is the thing that I'm loving right now? Who knows what it'll be?
Amazing question. So I definitely, as you said, chameleoned my way into this whole career that I created for myself. So when I told you I was in Byron Bay and I started my business, what I was actually doing was teaching yoga online. So I was doing yoga classes on Zoom. This is like peak pandemic online workout classes. So I was doing that for a while. I had a few private clients and I was like, you know what? This is my thing. I'm going to become a health and wellness influencer. I'm going to create a yoga app. I'm going to become like, a yoga guru. I'm going to have a clothing line. I mean, I was delusional living in another planet about this yoga thing. And then very quickly after like 3 months, I was like, I don't think I want to do that. I don't think I want to do the yoga thing. So then I just used skills that I had from sales and my expertise in storytelling and digital media to work on mindset coaching with people. So then I was doing that for like a year and a half, mindset coaching. And eventually it got to be pretty emotionally draining and exhausting because of the the level of emotional issues that people were coming with. And I was doing things back to back to back. So talk about reflector energy and like being inconsistent. I was trying to be like manifesting generator status with the 5 back-to-back one-on-ones and then doing a course call. And then at night I would take workshops. And I was like, I'm actually going to like end up in the hospital if I keep at this pace. It became actually a really big problem in my relationship. I would be coming to bed at 4 in the morning after working all day and taking all these workshops. And my ex was like, what are you doing? Like, this is not a sustainable lifestyle. So eventually I realized that mindset coaching wasn't the thing for me either. And so I was like, well, what skills do you have? And what can you teach people? And I had already had my podcast in my non expert opinion for 3 years before I started my own business. And then it started clicking like, wait, I went to school for this. My background is broadcast journalism, TV hosting, reporting. I literally have a grad degree in storytelling. Like this could be the thing I help people with. So I remember being like, let me see if this is even real, right? I think a lot of business owners that are creative are like, what I'm teaching isn't quote unquote real. Like,
Oh,
is podcast coaching a real title? Like, is this a real industry or is this like a made up, thing that like I want to be a princess? Like, that's what it sounds like. So I remember I put some feelers out and it turns out a lot of people wanted to start a podcast. So I started doing that. And in my mind, I was like, oh, this is just like any other field. You have a consultant and you have someone helping you and showing you the steps and being a strategist. And I kept getting all this feedback like, you're the only one I know who does this. Or like, I've never heard of this, like podcast strategy and coaching. And I was like, there's a million people like this that do it. And people were like, no, a lot of people are editors or helping you with launch strategy, but they're not doing like the holistic podcast coaching. And that was the first time I realized, like, oh, maybe this is my reflectorness coming in where I created kind of I found the white space for myself and like put myself in there. And then to your question of, is this forever? No. And I know that sounds crazy. This is my career. This is how I make my money. This is what I love to do. But I can almost with 100% confidence say, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 50 years old. I have a lot of other things I want to accomplish. I want to write a book. I want to go to culinary school. I want to host retreats. I might want to open like a really cute cafe and wellness center one day. So I keep all these things in mind, knowing that when I think about my future, I don't have like a 5-year plan to create a podcast coaching empire, because this is not how I feel in my soul, what I meant to do. I do think I'm meant to wear 20 different hats as a reflector and see what it's like. Have you ever read the book Midnight Library?
no. Oh my goodness. What is it?
Oh my gosh, it's a girl that she goes to this library and she pulls out all these different books and she gets to try a new life. So she gets to be like an Olympic swimmer, and then she gets to go study glaciers in Alaska, and then she owns a pub with her ex-boyfriend. Like she
Wow.
tries on all these lives, and sometimes I think in my head like I'm living out my own midnight library. Like I get to try on all these different hats and lives and see which one I want the most, and giving myself permission to be like, it's okay if you let this go. And I will say I feel comfortable letting things go because I've already done it, right? I let go of the yoga. I let go of the mindset coaching. I didn't die. Nothing happened. I'm still here. So I trust myself now that wherever I go in the future, I'm going to be okay. But yeah, that's how I see
Oh, I
things
love
now
it.
is like, I get to live my own midnight library.
I've got to go. I'm going to get that book. Oh my goodness. I love it. It reminds me of, I wish I could remember the name of it, another book I read a while ago now about this woman who, on her birthday, which is New Year's Day, is her birthday. And every year she wakes up, but she's at like a different age. Like, so she's no longer going chronologically. So she goes from being like
Oh,
21 to 50 and then back to 28. And it's just
oh, I love that.
fantastic. So yeah, I'm totally looking that up. Do you know what I also love about what you were sharing is there's that evolution we always talk about with reflectors is just take time, take your time, go slow,
Hmm.
and you being able to see like, wow, I've studied for this, I've trained for this, I've done all the things, and over time it's kind of evolved and shown itself. And from a behavioral point of view, one of the things I think is so important is like not being attached to the fact that you have to do this still when you're 50, because at the end of the day, so much of our pain comes from our identity and that loss of identity. So the fact is, like, even going through this process, you being more in alignment as a reflector is actually healing your identity, your mental health, and giving you such epic resilience, which I think is so freaking beautiful.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add too that this might be something that maybe reflectors feel too, is sometimes I feel very clairvoyant and that I can like feel what my future is going to feel and see what my future is going to look like. And something I've thought about is, this whole podcast coaching empire. And I've thought through all the steps and I'm like, I almost can put myself 5 years from now and see myself building that empire. And I know exactly what to do, right? I know you need to hire team members and you build out an organization. I know how to build an agency. I know how to hire people and I know how to build scopes and operations. Like I could build that. I really could. It's just I don't want to. And I think as a reflector, it's something that I think we do have this gift of being able to see all these different lenses and like aerial view of something and be like, yeah, maybe that's not in alignment. And it gives this sense of relief of like, I know how to do it. I just don't want to.
Yeah, oh my goodness, I love it. And it's also this whole the fact that you can see the potential, So yes, they can see and feel into the future. And it's almost like all the different timelines, It's like it's
Mhm.
almost you have access to all the different timelines. And I think what's
Yes.
really interesting, just hearing your story and how it's evolving and how even you see the future. A lot of what you're reflecting back is all of these the generators. So all of us that have the defined sacral who are here to redefine work. And, to hear a reflector say, like, yeah, I'm just going to do what I love and I'm going to navigate that. And I know that I'm always going to be taken care of. For me, I feel like that's what a beautiful reflection of the world that we're living in and the future that we're creating, because we really do need to be or we don't need to be, but it feels very true and honest to me that work is not going to be this linear thing. It's going to be this thing that is more in alignment with living your life and prioritizing love and connection and impact and giving back and all of these things before you're actually like, well, my work is my everything. So
Hmm.
seeing that reflected back in you is, I think, is really beautiful and just a demonstration of how we are changing things and why it's so important for us to live in alignment and really live our truth, because we are creating something completely new, which is so exciting.
I love it.
Mm. So I would love to talk a bit about podcasting specifically, because I do feel like this, like when I got into it a few years ago, it still wasn't a big thing. A lot of the initial success of my podcast was because no one else was doing it. There was only uh, one other completely focused on human design podcast out there. So it was kind of like, as long as I got up and showed up and did the thing, it kind of grew. Now, over time, I've learned that it's, not just the fact that I showed up, there's a whole lot more that I did without even realizing I was doing it. But can you please help all these people out here who maybe they're thinking of starting a podcast, or they've started a podcast and they just feel like that, it's crickets, nothing's going on out there. Like to start a podcast, to kick it off, what are the things that they really need to understand or know?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm like fired up. Get ready, buckle up, because I have so much to say about this. But I think the first thing when you're starting one, a lot of the mindset that comes in is, why would I start one now? There's a million podcasts out there. And you were kind of just hinting at that too, right? Like mine was the only one. And then it just happened to be like the market was small. And so I had the opportunity to grow. So people really think like it's too late and I just can't do it. My argument to that is, that's not what we think about books, right? I'm looking right now at my books right in front of me. I have 3 books about existentialism, and then I have 2 books about relationships, and I have 3 fantasy ones, right? And I'm like, I don't read one fantasy book. I'm like, I'm done with fantasy for the rest of my life. I'm done with relationship content for the rest of my life. Like, as humans, we go down rabbit holes and we just want more and more and more. So, for example, if someone's listening and wants to start a human design podcast, they might listen to yours for one specific reason, but they also have the permission to start one in their voice just by being themselves, which is the message you're always saying too. It's automatically going to make it different. So I listen to like a million different comedic podcasts, right? Some of them make fun of the pop culture. Some of them make fun of reality TV shows. Some of them make criticisms on America. Like they have all these funny angles. And it doesn't mean just because I start listening to one, I can't listen to the other. So if anything, if you're in that mindset of, oh, there's already a human design podcast out there, think of like thank God, right? You have a market that people are listening, right? Your podcast is incredible. It's huge. That's amazing news that shows people are into human design and want to hear it. To me, that's your green light to go and jump on the wagon that people are into human design and want to hear more of this content. So that's number one in terms of mindset. If you're getting started, I think the other thing is people really think that you have to be like a broadcast journalist, like, Barbara Walters, investigative journalist with all these like questions and skills and have the best Hollywood setup production. I did my first like 50 solo episodes on the voice note memo on my phone, like the voice app. I had people message me and say, "This is your quality is so amazing. Where are you recording in?" And I was like, "My voice memo in my bed." And they were like, "No way." And I'm like, "Yes, it can be that easy." So when we're thinking about cost and production and, oh, I don't have a studio in my house, blah, 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 you don't need that. I travel full time. I've been to like 16 different cities this year. I do not have a production room or studio or anything. So in terms of like equipment and cost, you really just need something to record audio, something to capture it, and then something to edit. You can find all those tools for free. I have a lot of them on my website, or you can DM me and I'm happy to send you those. That's for beginners starting out. If you have a podcast, and I've seen this happen to me and a bunch of my clients too, and you're like, I do this every week. I put so much money into it and so much investment, and it is crickets. Like, I don't know what's happening. It's usually because you don't have an engagement strategy and you're not prompting people to take action. So, unfortunately, the part of podcasting that is so weird is that people can't directly like comment on your episodes, right? You don't go on Apple Podcasts and like write, "I love this." You either go do that on their Instagram or Instagram stories or their email. So what you need to think about as a podcaster is, do I have a platform where people can talk to me and I can talk with them? And if not, think about how you can create that. So for me, that's my newsletter. And then Spotify has incredible features where you can now ask people questions on the platform. You can do polls, and then using your social media, right? Using your Instagram and saying, DM me with your biggest takeaway, or reach out and comment on my latest post with your top favorite quote from the episode or something. I find a lot of people tend to get a bit, I don't know what the word is, like, I guess lazy with the ending, where it's just like, "Thanks for listening, catch you next week." And then they're like, "Oh, people aren't engaging." I'm like, you have to hold people's hand with what you want them to do. So when you sign off, instead of saying, "Thanks so much, catch you next week," say, "Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe." Go to Apple Podcasts, go down to the part where it says write a review, reach out to me and send that to me. I'll pull a session. If you win, I'm going to do a one-on-one session with you, or I'm going to send you a video or something. And be sure to share in your Instagram stories for an extra bonus entry, right? Now you're giving people a reason to want to interact with you and say, "Oh my God, wait, I could win a one-on-one session with her if I just tag her in stories and reach out and whatever," right? So think about your endings and your intros, to be honest, to make them more intentional. That's always my advice when people start telling me like, "We're not getting any feedback and people aren't saying anything." I'll go listen to their episodes, and it's just a sign off like, "Thanks, catch you next week." One last thing I'll say about this too, this is kind of a psychology thing, is when you leave things way too open-ended, I think of it like the Cheesecake Factory menu. People get paralyzed decision-making process like happens. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. Analysis paralysis, where you could say, "Hey, let me know what you want to hear about next week." And people are like, "I don't know what the boundaries are. Like, what I want to hear about you and your boyfriend fighting, but do you want to talk about that on the podcast? Like, I want to hear how much money you made. I want to hear what your relationship is like when you're not on Instagram." Like, people don't know the boundaries, so you have to give that to them. So when you're posting on Instagram, instead of saying like, "Hey, vote on the next topic, let me know," give them options. Like, do you want to hear about my monthly breakdown in income or me planning my wedding, right? I'm using random examples, but give people options so that they can pick between the two. Just like when you go to a really fine dining restaurant and they literally have like 3 options of salads, you have to pick one of the salads. When you go to the Cheesecake Factory, you're like, "I don't even know, I'm overwhelmed and I want to leave." So, like I said, I could talk about this for 8 hours, so I'll stop there. But I think the biggest thing is you need an engagement strategy and stop speaking to an empty cave, because that's what podcasting can feel like if you don't have that line of communication with your listeners.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love that. And I think that's one of the things I just put a podcast out on Monday and have got so much feedback, whether it's on Telegram, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's emails. And I definitely, every time I'm like, thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for sharing. Because it can feel like it can be very one way. So I love that. Making sure, and instantly it makes me go, I'm going to improve my you know, exit strategy. I
Yeah.
love that. So one of the things I think, and this is actually something that, like, as yet I have not mastered, is that how do we actually make money out of podcasting? Because I
Mm.
think the model is we see a lot of the podcasters out there, and they've got paid advertising, and I mean I've got really freaking good numbers. However, how do I turn those really good numbers into making money? And
Hmm.
in fact, before we answer my question, in fact, let's answer my question, but then can we go on to making money for people who maybe don't have the same size audience?
Yeah. Okay. So, how industry insider do you want me to get? Like, how nerdy? Because
Oh,
I
please
can make
go
this.
there. Like, go there. I want to
Okay.
hear it all.
Okay, so I'm gonna like spill all the secrets because I used to work in influencer marketing and content marketing. So my background for 6 years was working with influencer agencies and talent agencies, etc. And then I got to work on the other side of it, being a content creator myself. So the way I look at podcasting is there's two avenues. You're an influencer or you're a coach. And you can be both. I think a good example of this is someone like Gabby Bernstein, right? She has her conferences and courses and everything. She also has products, but then she does have brand partnerships and does advertising as well. So you can do both. If you are a new podcaster or a new business owner, this is really hard for two reasons. The first is as soon as you start taking on brand partnerships, those people become almost your boss. A lot of us get out of corporate America or corporate whatever, right? We're trying to get out of the corporate handcuffs to not have bosses, and we want to do our own creative thing. As soon as I don't know, I have Samsung headphones right now. If Samsung reached out to me and said we want to do a brand partnership with you, Samsung's marketing team now becomes my boss, and they're going to tell me you need to market this, it needs to go live on this date, you have to say these things, follow these brand guidelines. And these people are strict, you guys. Like, the legal hoops that you have to jump through and the contracts, I don't think people realize how much goes into it. So, can you, if I work with Samsung, does that mean I can't work with Apple? Okay, well, that's going to charge me more. I need to charge more. Oh, you want me to do this for 8 episodes, not just four? Okay, well, I need to charge more. Oh, you want me to call them earbuds instead of ear pods? Oh, okay, like I didn't realize that. And now I said it wrong and I have to re record the whole ad. So, I'm telling you, this is a full time job. This is why influencers do it full time. So I used to think, oh, I can do both. And I took on brand partnerships while I was also doing consulting and coaching. And I was pulled in so many different directions creatively. It was too much to handle. Now, that's also because I'm a small team, right? I have me and a few other contractors helping me. I do think you can do it if you have the team members and the systems and the people in place to help you get there. It's just a reminder like you become almost an employee of these brands and these sponsors. So that's route one. And if you're like,
Which,
yeah, I want to do that,
see,
like,
to me, like instantly, I'm like, oh, that feels a bit icky, you know? Like,
yeah, and I
especially
like don't like
if I,
that.
and even if I love the brand, like, yeah, like I'm very big on, I'm going to support you around your dates. And, one of the things that I'm really looking at is the best way to, or the advertising that we put on the podcast. I'm thinking the best way to do it is everyone that we have affiliates with. Because if I'm an affiliate for someone, then I believe in them. Then I'm aligned to their values. That they're my people. They're my humans. I'm never going to promote something that I don't believe in. So I feel like and then so although they're not directly paying me cash, I'm still going to be earning off their signups. So
Exactly. And that's something I would say too is affiliates are good because you're not beholden to a campaign timeline. So for example, going back to the Samsung headphones, they could say we have a Christmas campaign coming up, so we actually need you to post on December 15th all the way to the 25th. The affiliates, you could promote that all year, you could promote that one day a week, you can do whatever you want, and then you still get paid out. Obviously, it's a smaller amount than if they paid you like $1,000 for a post, But you have to consider the $1,000 for a post is you it's a new creative project, right? So when you're a new business owner, the way I see it is like I have my own podcast, I have my own email, I have my own Instagram that I want to build and put effort into. And as soon as I take on a partnership, now I have to add that to the mix. And I find that to be quite challenging. So when people ask, how do you make money? I suggest going either exclusive, like creating paywalled content. So making tiers where maybe you have like a Q&A or behind the scenes or ask me anything episodes. Those do really well behind paywalls. So you can do this on Patreon, you can do it on Substack. Apple and Spotify rolled out subscription models. I will say if you're someone that's new and you have low numbers, I think this is harder because you have to remember like subscriptions cost between $5 and $7. So unless you have a mega audience, it's not going to translate into like, rolling in the dough, funding your entire lifestyle. It's probably going to be like a nice extra chunk of cash, but probably not, again, not going to hold you. It's not going to cover all your basic needs if you're just doing subscriptions. That's my opinion. Now, again, I'm talking about like mid-tier and micro influencers. If you're someone that has like 100,000 followers and you have hundreds of subscriptions, then yeah, that actually could help you bring in a lot of money. I also think merch does really well. So creating hoodies, water bottles, stickers, you can sell that. Products do really well. Like I would love to make a hat in the future. And like, I would love if I really had the time and money to develop like my own microphone or a cool, like piece of equipment or something. And you can start making money that way. This is me going like visionary level, but people make merch a lot, right? They make hoodies or hats or things like that. And then the other way that you could make money too is doing live shows or in-person events. So you could do conferences, you could do panels. I've seen people rent out rooms at like the Soho House and do a live show, or their local hotel, they'll rent a ballroom and have like tickets to an event. So those are some other ways to make money. But for me, and I don't think a lot of podcast strategists would agree with this, but this is how I see it. I use the podcast as a funnel to sell my coaching and my consulting. So for me, if I put out an episode and someone applies and they sign a $10,000 deal, I'm like, that's monetization, right? Like I just put out a piece of content and I made money. Maybe it's not directly from it, but I know most people will actually say, I heard you from your podcast, or I heard you on another podcast. So I have that data and I understand, okay, then it's worth me to continue putting time and investment into the podcast because I'm seeing clients and conversions. So the non-traditional way is like you're just selling your own services. And this is the model you see with pretty much any coach or influencer now is any coach that has that like celebrity status usually funnels people into some type of service or offer, unless they're like the mega people, right? Like the Lewis Howes that they have the brands and they have the mega masterminds and all these things. Because again, Lewis Howes has a huge team and the backing of a production team. If you're like me and you're traveling and you have a portable Yeti microphone and you're just trying to like keep your business going, I would say focus on your high ticket offers and your own services versus trying to land in like brand deals or paywalls. I would wait until you really have a foundation where you can do that.
Oh my God, this is just so valuable. I'm taking notes in the background and loving it. Okay, so they've decided they want to start a podcast. They've maybe even started it. They feel like they're just rambling. They don't really know what direction they're going in. How can they make the content really valuable to the listeners?
Oh, this is good. So rambling is fun if it ties back to your topic, right? We love little side tangents and stories, but I know sometimes we listen to podcasts and we're like, oh my God, like get to the point, what is happening? So for me, I always recommend having a basic outline to follow. My personal outline is like 5 bullets. It's just so I can stay on track. If I have specific stories that I want to tell, then I make sure to plug those in. The best way to become a better storyteller is to start to get more specific. So for example, let's say I told you, today I walked around the park. It was really cool. It was sunny out. Great. That sounds like any other person's day today. If I told you, Emma, I walked along the park and I had chills when I stopped and looked at the glittery water. It was literally shining back at me and I felt like the spirit and I were connecting. and I just sat there and looked out on the water, and I feel this connection with nature, and the trees are blowing, the green tree, right? Like already you can see how descriptive specifics
Yeah, I'm
make it
in.
a better story. Yeah, exactly. Right. I don't even know what story I was telling, but that's the point, is like the more descriptive and specific you are, the better. So when you're doing these outlines and you're like, oh, I have my bullets, you have, this is where I think the market is saturated with self-improvement content that is not specific. So if you're just telling people, oh yeah, hire support and start saving more and invest in your business, I'm like, that to me means absolutely nothing. That's like a word salad of mush mash that I'm like, I that does not resonate. I'm also a Virgo moon and Virgo rising, so I like need the details and the tea. So if you're going to tell people to invest in their business, what does that mean? Like, give them percentages. How did you do it? What did you see? What were your returns? How did you even figure that out? Who did you hire to help? Like, those are the things that start to make you a better storyteller, is giving people those specific details. I would say the last thing is, if you're interviewing and you're noticing your guest is rambling, it's probably because you left it open ended. And so you can back them into numbers. So instead of saying, like, tell me about your background, say, tell me one thing from your childhood that shaped who you are today. So now this is called, what's the word? Constraint, right? So if I told you, Emma, please go draw me a picture, you would say, of what? Like, can you give me like a prompt? But if I said, go draw me something green that's outside, what do you think of?
Tree.
Exactly, right? So you're already like, boom, I have something to like answer. Think of when someone's on the spot live talking. If you just say, tell me about your childhood, they're like, oh my God, wait, do I tell them about like that part with my mom, or do I leave that out? Or like, I don't know, what do I start at age 2 or age 8? Like, they start freaking out, and that's why they start rambling. So if you just say, give me 2 specific moments from your childhood that shaped who you are today, now they know, okay, the brain goes into that mode of, let me find those 2 moments and get back to you. So I think that helps a lot when you're interviewing.
I love that. And so, a couple of questions I want to ask about questions themselves and numbers. So, the questions, I think, of all the research I've done on questions and then overlaying that with human design, I mean, I've got an undefined head and ajna, so I can't plan too much. Like, the best I can do
Mm.
is dot points, right? And I think it was, what's his name? Peterson. Um, anyway, um, one of these big podcast hosts, and he says, like, when he has a guest, he brainstorms every question he could possibly ask, dumps them all on a piece of paper, then screws up the piece of paper and throws it away and goes to the interview. So I would love to, like, what's your recommendation for, coming up with questions? Because I know that there's a large part of me that when I think about it, I'm like, well, I want to ask them questions that are going to serve the audience, and I want to ask them questions that other people haven't asked them. However, one of the biggest things for me is, like, I'm actually, when I focus on, well, how does this affect me? What am I curious about for me and my business? Then it's so much easier. So, and I get a much better interview. So, what's your advice around questions?
I would say it's actually the latter of what you said. This is definitely not professional corporate advice. I think the best interviews are the most nosy people that are asking the questions. So the nosier you are, and you're like, no, 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 hold on, pause. We need to dig deeper. You just said this one thing and you're glossing over it. I need to know what exactly happened. Those are the best interviews for both people, because not only are you getting the details, like we talked about, the specifics, your audience probably listens because they relate to a lot of what you're asking and saying. So they're not going to be like, whoa, that's so crazy that Emma asked this question, because they're probably already tuning in because of the questions you ask, and they want to know the same exact thing. So I would say that. And then the second part of that is that it becomes a better interview for the person, because they're like, oh, no one's ever actually asked me the details. Like, I do kind of give this media trained answer of like, yeah, I did this, and then I saved money, and then I invested, and then my business became a 6-figure. It's very like blah, blah, blah. Where if you're like,
Boring.
and boring, right? Like, how many times can we hear that story? It's like, okay, hold on. So you always want to bridge the gap with specifics. So yeah, if they're giving these answers like, yeah, I was so broke, I was sleeping on my grandma's couch, and then I invested in a course and now I'm a multimillionaire. It's like, back up. Like, Where did you even find the money to invest in a course? Like, who gave you that money? Like, where did it come from? Those little nosy details, in my opinion, are what make an interview. Now, I need to add context here, right? You don't want to be abrasive and brash and intruding and like, whoa, 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 like, people are going to be caught off guard. This is why I think you brief people and you ask them up front, what do you want to talk about? What's off limits? You can naturally get the conversation there. And this is a hot tip. You can use like a third party to ask a question. So what I mean by this is I'll stop people sometimes and be like, you know what? My listeners are going to want to know exactly what you mean by that. So instead of saying like me, Chelsea Riffe, I need to know, I'm going to say, a lot of people in the audience are going to be confused about this. Can you explain this more? So if you use this like third party, which is your listeners or audience, you will get more out of people because they realize too, oh yeah, like this story probably will help a lot of people. So again, I could go on and on about this. I have done full master classes on this and workshops because interviewing was my expertise in education when I was younger. But I really think the details and like those nosy little questions are actually what make a really good interview.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that the best interview is when I'm listening to people. It's when I think of a question and then they ask it, and I think
Yes.
they're just like, you're on the same path. Like you're so immersed with that guest. You're so present with that guest, with that podcast. So are they. And it's almost like inevitable that it would go in that direction. So
Exactly.
yeah, I love that. I love that. So one of the things I also want to ask about, talking about details, is I want to ask about the actual numbers, because I know that this was something that's really baffling. And even now, I'm not really sure. Like I know that I have a really like a top 1%, top 3% podcast. I know that globally our numbers from human design, I believe at this stage, are the biggest of all the human design podcasts. But what do they actually mean? So if someone is starting their podcast, I know in the beginning it was like, what? That's like nothing. And mine grew really, really fast. And a dear friend of mine who has a podcast as well, hers took a lot longer to take off. So how do we interpret the figures? I mean, I'm not attached to figures. Like that's not really a thing for me. I don't follow likes or any of those things. Like it just doesn't light me up. But I know that when we are starting a business and when we want to grow something, we have to understand our metrics. So can you walk us through those? What are these metrics?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the whole influencer versus coach argument and understanding how your numbers serve you. Big viral numbers only matter if you want to lock in brand sponsorships. Brands want to see how many downloads, listens per month, per day, blah, 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 because that's to them the only data they have to know, is this person worth investing money in to see if we're going to get an ROI? At the end of the day, a brand is a business, right? That's the only data they have. You could be the nicest, coolest, best content creator in the world. It doesn't really matter if your numbers don't align with what their business goals are. Now, if you're a coach or consultant or a service provider, to me, the numbers that you need to be looking at are the episode numbers and what content is performing best. So if you did, let's say, weekly episode and it's getting 100 downloads an episode, and then all of a sudden you do one and it spikes to like 1,000 downloads, that's giving you information. There was something very specific about that episode that shows you people resonated with it. So then you take that and start to extrapolate and make more episodes out of that content. And then you go back to the data. Okay, wow, yeah, these two performed really well. These ones are not doing that well. Okay, that's good. I can keep developing my content. So as the second tier of this, being the coach or influencer or service provider, data to me is how you plan out your content. So it helps you, instead of like, oh, what am I going to post about this week? I've already talked about human design and I've already talked about business and I already talked about money. It's like, go pull up your dashboard, go look at the top 5 episodes. What do you think stood out about those? And this goes back to what we were talking about, audience engagement. Get your audience involved. Say, hey guys, these were my top 5 episodes. Did you tune into one of them? What was your favorite part? And people will probably tell you, oh, I love that you vibed with her and you asked her this question. This one, you shared your breakdown of your monthly income, which is really helpful for me for context. So then you get your audience involved and now you're creating content for them. And when your audience feels involved, they are naturally and organically going to share your content. These are the people that are tagging you in stories without even asking, sharing your links in the group chat, sharing it in their newsletter, because they can see that you keep their opinion in mind. This last thing I'll say about metrics too is podcasting is a slow burn, and it's very dysregulating and discouraging when, some of your Instagram posts will go viral, or you'll get thousands of views on a reel, and then you'll look at your podcast and be like, this has 45 downloads. Like, what am I doing? This is a waste of time. And it's kind of like a mind, I don't know if we can cuss, so I'll say mind.
Yes, you can. Yep.
Okay. Mind fuck when you're like, wait, I am literally spending hours a week on this thing, and I'm spending money on editing and graphics and the host site and the microphone, and I'm getting 45 downloads. Here's where people start to mess up in how they look at it. Go look at how that's converting. I don't care if you have 45 downloads if you just sign 2 high ticket clients at $10,000. To me, that's the most baller thing in the world. You only need 45 downloads and you're signing $20,000 deals. Like, that's incredible. To me, that's a better metric than saying, oh, I have 100,000 downloads, but I don't get any applications or any work, and I'm just like a viral podcaster. That's only cool if you want to be a brand partnership influencer type of deal. So whenever I look at my downloads, I'll be super transparent. My downloads right now range from like anywhere between 100 to 500 an episode. And I am on track to sign a client next year. That's probably, one client is probably going to pay me 6 figures. So to give people insight, it's like, I don't care. If I were to look at those episodes that I have like 90 downloads, it's like, yeah, but those are 90 very warm, highly qualified people to work with me. And the point is that I'm not this like viral call her daddy trying to appeal to 18 million people. I know that these 90 people listening to this episode are either like potential clients or really big fans of the show that are going to share it. And by the way, like, we need to stop like shitting on small audiences. I'm like, 90 people is a lot. Like, if I had to speak to a room of 90 people, I would be kind of freaking out. So that's what I always tell people too, is like, if you were at town hall and had to speak to 10 people, that's still kind of scary. So if you see 10 downloads, it's like, you have to really give thanks to that, because I think a big like undervalued piece of podcasting is that people do not hate listen to podcasts, right? We sometimes follow people, we're like, oh, I don't really like her, but I'm like addicted to watching her content and it's kind of a train wreck and I'm going to just follow her and see what happens. We don't do that with podcasts. Like, I have such limited time in my day. I'm not going to listen to a random person that I don't like. So if one person is listening to your podcast, that is one person that's taking 30 minutes to an hour of their day to tune into what you have to say. So you need to start giving more thanks to the fact that, wow, 10 people actually chose to take an hour out of their day to listen to me. That's incredible.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, there's just this misconception, in the world right now, there's way too many people trying to be, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan. You do you, and get clear on the purpose. Like, what is the purpose of your podcast? I think if I think about this for my podcast, a large part of the purpose of my podcast is to talk to people like you. Like, I love that. The other thing is to share, that line 5 wants to universalize everything that I'm experiencing in my life, everything that I'm learning, everything that I see in all my communities. So for me, I think from that perspective, that's what my podcast is all about. However, it's really interesting. I remember my first ever mastermind. So I sold my big ticket item before I ever sold something, small. And I filled it just off the podcast. And at that stage, my podcast had a tiny audience. So I just love that reframe of like, really be grateful for the people that are listening, because they are actually genuinely invested. Like, they actually give a shit. They're not just there to, follow someone and see what happens. So I think that's really beautiful. I love that. Okay, so I'm really conscious of time. Out of everything that we've talked about today, and maybe things that we haven't talked about today, what are 3 things that you think people need to know?
I think that one of the big ones is kind of what you just alluded to, is we need to stop chasing fame and virality. It is a short, fleeting, very dissatisfying illusion that will not fulfill you. If you are trying to hit 1 million downloads or 1 million followers or whatever the case is, I want you to ask yourself, and then what? Then what? Cool, I have 1 million downloads on the podcast. Okay, and then what? Like, it's never going to be enough. So if your only goal is to become this 1 million downloads person or 1 million Instagram followers, I really implore you to be like, what is the feeling I want? And I think it's recognition, adoration, admiration. I want to be respected. I want credibility. You can get those things by becoming really good at your craft and becoming really authentic and not need to have the 1 million downloads or followers. So I think that's number one, is like, we need to stop chasing fame and virality and thinking that that's the only measure of success.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
empty.
two, yeah, it's empty. It's fleeting. We see this all the time. Look at all the celebrity memoirs that are coming out and documentaries and everything. And everyone's like, it's not that great. Like,
And it's
there's people.
fascinating to me because there's so many influencers that have reached out to me and they're like, yeah, can you coach me? And then we talk about the money and they're like, oh my God, I don't have the money. I'm like, wow, like that is not the lifestyle that you portray. But, each to their own, whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. So 100%. Number two is that podcasting, to your point, can actually be this really incredible networking tool. I have made the craziest connections through podcasting just from interviews. I literally, like, I got to go to this woman's book launch, and then she was like, oh, I'll introduce you to my agent. And then now she's like, wait, I can introduce you to my other friend. I'm like, wait, am I about to like be a published author just because I interviewed this woman on my podcast? That those are things you wouldn't even expect. I've gotten to speak at panels. I've gotten to guest teach inside people's masterminds. I've had people, we literally do an interview and they'll hire me or I'll hire them right after. So there's this underrated thing that I don't think people actually realize. I want to start talking about it more. I'm like, it's not just about, oh, I have a high quality podcast and sometimes I get clients. It's like your guests and the people in your podcast world can actually become these incredible opportunities to like guest speak, public speak, have a TED talk, publish a book. Like, there's so many things that come out of that. And then I would say the third thing is that podcasting, um, I really feel like the missing piece is that engagement and like chat level. So think about your platform and where you can build this. I'm going to launch a Slack channel where I want my podcast listeners to come and we can all chit chat, have like, girl time, whatever you want to call it. Your platform could be on Discord, Telegram, I think you said you have, Geneva. It could be a Zoom once a month. But I think this is the biggest thing that podcasters are missing, and why you said a lot of people get discouraged, because they're like, I really feel like no one's listening and it sucks and I just want to stop doing it. I talk to my clients all the time about this, and it's because we're truly speaking into a cave and we have no one, we can't even see the light. We're like, is anyone in this cave? Like, hello, where's the light? So you need to create that and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to create a platform where people can talk and we can all hang out and have a discussion. So that's the big thing. I truly think Spotify is rolling out a lot of tools right now to help us get there. So keep your eyes on Spotify. I know they're putting a lot of investment money into tools like this. So I really think in 2024, this is going to be more refined. But until those tools roll out, think of how you can build that yourself.
Oh my God, I love that. And can you please give listeners 3 things to do? So the do is all about the actions. What are the 3 actions that they can take?
3 actions they can take. Okay, 1, with guests, shoot your shot on the DMs. You would be so shocked how many people love talking about themselves and will just say yes to come on your podcast. You don't have to pay people, by the way. I think this is another big misconception, that you have to pay your guests. No, go DM your favorite author, your favorite influencer, your favorite whoever, your coach, and say, hey, I'd love to interview you on the podcast. Just DM them, have that booking link ready to go and see what they say. I can almost guarantee you, if you take the next 30 minutes and DM 5 people, you'll probably book a person. Like, please let me know, because I really think this will work. 2 action items. I would say start learning softwares that will help you become a better podcaster. So for example, Descript is an incredible, incredible software because it transcribes your audio. And what you can do, if you want, this is like next level podcaster stuff, you can start reading through your transcript and being like, wow, I repeat this one word a lot, or it sounds like I say the same thing over and over again. I just did this the other day and I looked at the intro and I was like, this is like a 6-minute intro. It's very unnecessary. And so I went through the transcript and cut things out. And that's because I know how to use the transcript and I'm able to identify that this is a little bit too lengthy. So understanding Descript and figuring it out and doing all that was a bit of a process. But now that I know it, it also helps me negotiate better with like producers and editors, right? Because I know how to teach them, hey, if you don't know how to use Descript, I can teach you, but I need you to have like the same kind of lens that I have. And I expect a high quality product. So I expect like whatever I would do to my podcast, I want you to do it even better. So it helps you have some leverage when you're hiring team members and you want to actually, again, make your podcast really high quality. So you use the tools, but learn them. So Descript, I think, is like one of my favorites right now. And then 3, I would say create a content calendar, even if it's loose, right? So I'm very much like you, where I don't really have like the next 6 months plan. I'm not like, oh my God, we have to have every little thing batched and ready to go. But I do have an aerial view where I can quickly move things around if I need to. I build mine in Notion. I know a lot of people use different platforms, but even if you just bullet it out and say, okay, I have Emma's interview next week, and then I have Chelsea the week after that, and then I want to do a solo, it actually helps you plan better and it makes you more selective with your guests. Have you ever dealt with this where you like accidentally book like 14 guests and you're like, wait, that's 14 weeks of content. When am I ever going to do a solo episode? I've done this so many times and it's because I didn't have a content calendar and I didn't look at the bigger picture. So now I can see that it's easier for me when people reach out that I'm like, hey, I actually can't talk to you because I am scheduled out until January. Why don't we regroup in February when I have more time? So then you don't have to say yes to all these people, because when you're a podcaster, it can become really overwhelming dealing with all, all the requests and the vice versa. So I think the content calendar is you kind of like your guard keeper of your own time. If you don't have that in place, you are going to say yes to every opportunity and then be like, whoa, I created this machine that I don't even know how to stop. And I think it really helps you get back your time. So develop a very rough content calendar, whether it's on Notion, bullets, whatever, but it will help you a ton.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Chelsea. I feel like
yes,
this podcast episode is basically a masterclass. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you've said.
Yes, of course.
Where can people find you and contact you?
Yes, you can find me at my website, chelseariffe.com. I'm also Chelsea Riffe on Instagram. And at chelseariffe.com, you can find a bunch of video courses and workshops. I also have a launch course. So if you want to launch a podcast, it's called Mic Drop. If you want to learn how to interview or pitch or storytell, I have a ton of courses around that. And then if you want to work with me one-on-one, that's also my website. And then my podcast is called In My Non-Expert Opinion, which you are on. And so everyone can hear Emma's amazing human design wisdom. So go check that out. And speaking of being a reflector, I do have to wear a million hats and I am launching a Substack this week. So I'll be sharing a lot of my writing and it's called Slight Turbulence. So you can find that on Substack.
Wow. That is brilliant. Oh my goodness. Go check out Chelsea, everybody, because she's freaking awesome. Chelsea, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. I trust you got what you needed from today. And don't forget to go follow me on Spotify and Apple and leave a review so that we can get this podcast into as many ears as possible and impact planet Earth. Thanks everyone for being here, and I look forward to having you on the next podcast. Bye for now. Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.